The Atacama Desert holds secrets that should never be uncovered. I followed a red trail, stones oxidized by time, ancient as memory itself, that led me beyond permitted boundaries, where the earth whispers legends of sacrifices, forbidden gods, and a lagoon that should never have been found. They say the driest place on earth is lifeless. They're wrong. Death isn't the absence of life. It's what remains when life has been taken. I arrived in San Pedro de Atacama on a Tuesday morning, though days don't mean much in a place like this. The town is small, dirt roads, low adobe buildings, and a church that's been standing since before anyone alive can remember. The air is thin at 2,450 meters above sea level. Every breath feels incomplete, like you're always on the edge of drowning in emptiness. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was looking for something real, something untouched by tourists with selfie sticks and guidebooks. I wanted what lies beneath the surface, where the desert keeps its true face hidden. And in a place like this, you don't have to ask many questions before the locals start telling you about things that shouldn't be spoken aloud. The first mention came from a woman selling empanadas at the market. She looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Don't go looking for the Red Lagoon." I hadn't asked about any lagoon. But the way she said it, like a warning wrapped in resignation, told me everything I needed to know. This was no tourist attraction. This was something else. That night, I sat in a bar with walls so thick they seemed to muffle sound itself. The locals avoided my eyes. Travelers passed through this town all the time, but I wasn't like them. I stayed longer, watched more, asked the wrong questions. An old Atacamino man finally approached me. His skin was weathered like the desert rocks, his hands gnarled from decades under the sun. He sat down without invitation and spoke in a voice that sounded like gravel grinding against stone. "You're looking for something," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. He leaned in and his breath smelled like coca leaves and old tobacco. "There's a place," he whispered. "High in the mountains. A lagoon the color of blood. The Aymara say it belongs to the devil." He tinted the water red as a warning. Those who drank from it died. Their blood made it redder still. Those who go there, they don't come back the same. I asked him where it was. He shook his head slowly. "You won't find it on any map. And if you do find it, you'll wish you hadn't." But the seed was planted. Curiosity is a disease without cure. And I was already infected. If you've ever felt that pull toward the forbidden, type the word forbidden below. And if you want to follow me deeper into places like this, where the world still holds its breath, consider subscribing. Because this journey is only beginning. The next morning I found a guide willing to take me, for a price. His name was Mateo, a young man with skeptical eyes and a reluctance that made me trust him more, not less. He didn't ask why I wanted to go. He just said, "I'll take you as far as I can. After that, you're on your own." We left before dawn, when the desert is still dark and the stars hang so low you feel like you could reach up and pull one from the sky. The road was rough, barely a road at all, just tire tracks carved into volcanic dust. The landscape around us was alien. Mars would feel familiar compared to this. Red rocks rose from the earth like the bones of some ancient creature. Lagoons of salt reflected distant mountains, their surfaces so still they looked like portals to another dimension. Geysers hissed and spat steam into the freezing morning air. The temperature swung wildly, below freezing at dawn, scorching by noon. This was a land that refused compromise. As we climbed higher, the air grew thinner. My lungs burned with every breath. At 3,000 meters, the altitude started playing tricks on my mind. Colors seemed sharper. Sounds carried farther. Time felt elastic, stretching and contracting without reason. And then I saw them. The red stones. They weren't scattered randomly. They formed a pattern, a trail of oxidized rocks leading deeper into the highlands. Mateo saw them too. His face darkened. "This is as far as I go," he said. I looked at him. "We're not even close." "I know." He turned the vehicle around without another word. "You want to follow that trail, you do it alone. I'm not going up there." I could have turned back. I should have. But the trail was there, clear as a path carved by intention. And I've never been good at walking away from questions that don't have answers. So I started climbing. The ascent took hours. At 4,200 meters above sea level, altitude sickness is no longer a possibility. It's a certainty. My head pounded with every heartbeat. My vision blurred at the edges. Every step felt like lifting iron weights. The air was so thin I could barely draw enough oxygen to keep moving. But I kept going. Because that's what obsession does. It drives you past the point where reason tells you to stop. And then I saw it. The lagoon. It sat in a basin surrounded by jagged peaks, steaming in the thin air. But it wasn't the location that stopped me cold. It was the color. Blood red. Not metaphorically. Not poetically. Literally the color of fresh blood, as if the earth itself had been slashed open and was bleeding into the sky. The water bubbled in places, releasing toxic vapor that shimmered in the sunlight. The temperature ranged between 100 and 120 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to scald skin on contact. No animals came near it. No birds flew overhead. The silence was absolute, the kind of silence that makes you aware of your own heartbeat, your own breathing, your own existence in a way that feels unnatural. I approached slowly. The ground around the lagoon was stained red, as if the water had overflowed and soaked into the earth. And then I saw them. Symbols. Carved into the rocks along the shore. Ancient glyphs, worn smooth by wind and time but still visible. They were Aymara, warnings perhaps. Or prayers. Or something darker. There were offerings too. Stones stacked in deliberate patterns. Scraps of cloth tied to sticks, bleached white by the sun. And bones. Small ones, weathered and brittle, half buried in the red dust. This place had been used for something. Rituals. Sacrifices. Acts meant to appease forces that no longer had names. According to legend, the devil himself owned this lagoon. He gave it a faint red hue as a warning to mortals. But an Aymara community settled here anyway, ignoring the sign. They drank from the water. And they died. Their blood, the story goes, is what turned the lagoon from pale red to the deep crimson it is now. Science offers different explanations. Algae, sediment, mineral deposits. But standing there, alone at the edge of the world, science felt irrelevant. Because some places don't need logic. They operate on older principles. Fear. Respect. The understanding that not everything in this world belongs to us. I felt it then. The weight of being watched. Not by eyes but by something heavier. The land itself. I wasn't welcome here. And I knew it. The real story, I realized, was only beginning. What I'd seen so far was just the surface. And if this journey has gripped you so far, consider subscribing, because the descent into truth is always darker than the climb. I walked along the edge of the lagoon, my boots crunching on the brittle ground. The air smelled metallic, sulfuric, like burning copper. My head swam with altitude sickness or maybe something else. It's hard to tell the difference when you're standing in a place that feels like it exists outside the normal flow of time. The ruins came next. Stone structures half collapsed, swallowed by the red earth. They were Inca, I thought, though I'm no archaeologist. The walls were thick, built to withstand wind and cold and centuries. But they'd been abandoned. Left to rot under the merciless sky. What? I moved closer. Inside one of the structures I found more offerings. Pottery shards. Woven textiles so old they crumbled at the slightest touch. And more bones. Larger this time. Human? I didn't want to know. But the answer was already there, whispering in the back of my mind. This had been a place of sacrifice. Not just animals. People. The Aymara believed in balance. Life for life. Blood for rain. Suffering for survival. And in times of drought, when the gods refused to listen, they offered what they valued most. 3 virgins, according to one legend, were tied and left at the lagoon during a terrible drought. Each wept a different color, red, yellow, green, and their tears became the 3 lagoons that exist in this area. The water returned. But so did a curse. Anyone who bathed in the lagoons would vanish or suffer misfortune beyond measure. I stood there, surrounded by the remnants of rituals I couldn't comprehend, and felt something I hadn't expected. Not fear. Sadness. These people had done what they believed was necessary. They'd given everything to survive in a land that offered nothing. And in the end, they disappeared anyway. Their homes crumbled. Their gods forgotten. Their blood soaked into the earth and became myth. A low sound echoed across the basin. I froze. It came from the mountains, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated in my chest. Wind maybe. Or the geothermal activity beneath the lagoon. Or something older, something without explanation. I realized then too late that I'd violated sacred ground. The traditions of the Atacama people forbid outsiders from entering places like this. And I'd walked in without permission, without understanding, driven only by curiosity and arrogance. The only way out was the same red trail that brought me here. And it felt longer now. Steeper. Like the desert was reluctant to let me leave. The descent was harder than the climb. My legs shook with exhaustion. My vision blurred. I stumbled more than once, catching myself on rocks that cut through my gloves. The altitude sickness worsened. Nausea rolled through me in waves. My head felt like it was splitting open. But it wasn't just the altitude. It was something else. A presence. Shadows moved at the edge of my vision, darting between rocks where nothing should have been. I heard footsteps behind me crunching on gravel, though every time I turned there was no one there. Was I hallucinating? Probably. Altitude can do that. Lack of oxygen, dehydration, exhaustion, they all conspire to break down the walls between what's real and what isn't. But I don't think that's all it was. Some places carry weight. Memory. Trauma. And when you step into them, you carry a piece of that weight with you. Maybe that's what the old man meant when he said people don't come back the same. By the time I reached lower ground, the sun was setting. The desert turned orange, then purple, then black. The stars emerged, cold and distant. I found Mateo waiting where he dropped me off, leaning against his truck with a cigarette between his lips. He looked at me for a long time. Then he nodded, as if confirming something he'd already known. "You found it," he said. I didn't answer. He drove me back to San Pedro in silence. When we arrived, the old Atacama man was sitting outside the bar, same as before. He looked at me with those ancient eyes and asked, "You found what you were looking for?" I wanted to say yes, or no, or something that made sense. But the truth was, I didn't know what I'd found. A cursed lagoon? A forgotten ritual site? Proof that some places should remain hidden? Or maybe just a mirror? A reflection of what happens when curiosity outweighs respect. When the need to know becomes more important than the need to leave things untouched. I didn't answer him either. The Atacama isn't just the driest place on Earth. It's a graveyard of empires, of myths, of men who dared to challenge the unknown. The Inca came here and built temples, then vanished. The Aymara settled here and whispered prayers to gods who didn't answer. Explorers crossed this desert and left their bones behind. And now the Red Lagoon remains. Untouched. Unclaimed. Waiting for the next traveler curious enough to follow the trail. I left Chile a week later. But a part of me stayed behind. It's still there, standing at the edge of that blood-red water, staring into the steam and the silence and the secrets that will never be spoken aloud. Some questions I've learned should never be asked. Some trails should never be followed. And some places belong to the desert forever. So what do you think? Would you take that journey knowing what I know now? Share your thoughts below, and if this story moved you, subscribe to join me on the next one. Until then, stay curious, stay brave, and never stop seeking the truth. Even when the truth doesn't want to be found.